we have the first question from Karen, who says, the US has taken a stance on not declaring space as a global commons. How will this affect future negotiations with the US in developing international legislation?
Indeed, Africa has, I said, is trying to coordinate its approach into arriving at common African position when we are negotiating on global fora. And that's, of course, one of the elements we are working on to ensure that any position that is unilaterally taken to say that, okay, this belongs to you rather than to humanity, well, it's sometimes very difficult for anybody to agree to that. But within the African process, for Africa to have a position to it, which is coordinated, it requires the African negotiator to be together. And we have provided also for backstopping. And that's where, again, I think your association can also be very, very useful in providing support and backstopping to the African side when they are really engaged in such difficult negotiation, particularly with partners who have been there for long and think that they are the people who have to basically come up with the rules. So when the rules is not correct, everybody knows it. And this one, everybody knows it. But how do we approach it to be successful? And for Africa to achieve that, it's when they are united, when they are coordinated, and then they go for it. So they need to come up with a common position that goes to the different organs. And once they have arrived at that position, they can defend it wherever they are. So me, I am a civil servant. I am an officer working for the African Union at the Secretariat. I don't decide the common position for African Union. I just advise them. That's what we do. So this is to say that, yes, when you look at it logically, it's not good, but still Africa has to come up with its common position and then take it on the negotiation table.
Thank you, Dr. Mahama. So we have another question from Naile, who says, has Africa taken or will be taking active measures to reduce space debris?
Space debris, yes. This is also another important aspect where even some of the African negotiators have requested the African Union to come in and again provide the support. Space is a common good, and clearly we want to ensure that it's there for long, meaning for us and also for coming generation, so that we can sustain it. And the only way to do that is to ensure that we are not messing with it. We are not messing up with it. That means ensuring that we are finding the different, I should say, regulation to ensure that we are not putting in space elements that are not as useful as we think they are, and to ensure that also that maybe at a certain point we have to together sit down around the table, the negotiation table, to agree on how we can clean the mess that is already up there. So all these are elements that definitely we have to take up on. But again, we will provide the support to the African group of negotiators so that they can make informed decision or informed position at the global level.
Thank you, Doctor. Samuel says, thank you, Dr. Ouedraogo, for your beautiful presentation. I would like to know if the African Union has a project to build rockets. Does she also have plans to build a space launch base? If so, what are these projects planned for? Are there actions taken to encourage African states to take an interest in space?
Okay, maybe let me start with the last one, because that one is definitely inbuilt within the space policy and statutes itself. We undertake a certain number of workshops, continental workshop with space stakeholders, including, of course, public sector, to advocate for more involvement in space. And if you have seen recently, there are many African countries who are really engaging in really satellite building, satellite training, training more people on space issues. And we are also, as part of the implementation of our programs, we have also taken the initiative to undertake training on building of CubeSats, etc. So all those are different action that we are really taking to ensure that space is not forgotten in Africa. It's at the forefront. And the reality is that it's like we are teaching to people who are already converted. And the African government, we are seeing that they are more and more really getting involved, because they know that most of there are so many technologies that they are using which are really derived from space, and they understand that. The challenge is, despite the sustained economic growth, they don't want to invest much in science and much less on space. So that's the challenge we are facing. But again, the private sector is coming in, and we believe that working together, space will really take a bigger place in African context. Because we have even realized sometime when we started having action on space, the workshops, it used to be, of course, face-to-face, but we didn't used to get as many participation as we are getting now, if you compare to some of the activities we are doing. And we are planning to have the African Space Week. The African Space Week, we planned for it last year. Because of the COVID, we couldn't do much. We postponed it for this year in June, but COVID may still be challenging. But definitely it's really a week-long event where we are going to really program all the different sector pillar of space. We will bring in all the different actors, what is going on, the state of space in the continent, etc., etc. And that will really make space, contribute to making space more prominent. And really, we want your support as we are doing that. So now, do we build rockets? Very important question. The thing is, the space policy and strategy does not make any restriction. Having said that, the decision to build rocket lies completely in the hands of the member states. And they may decide at which stage they would like to really go into a building of rockets, etc., etc. We know that the issue is also very sensitive, and some of the technology are not easily accessible, although they are there, all in the issue of security. So in a nutshell, the space policy and such does not exclude any segment or part of space. It doesn't exclude none of them. So when can it be phased in is dependent upon the context and the leadership at the level of the member states. Space launch base. Space launch base, Africa is probably a place that launching can be done very economically, In fact, there were some studies and there were some initiative in Kenya even. But to date, it's not that developed. But again, we are not excluding anything. We are not excluding anything, and we believe that as time is coming, and we are having more and more countries engaging in space, yes, Africa can arrive at a situation where it can also engage in the space launch phase based on the comparative advantage. We don't want to also to reinvent the wheel. We want to intervene where we really can bring in value for money, for African money, for the poor African farmer who is out there in the rural area, wanting to have 3 square meals a day. So we take all that into consideration as we decide on what we'll be doing. Back to you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mahama. So we have 3 questions left. Ograbaku asks, how can you explain the non-using of African countries of polyvalent wireless communication system, a technology that allows us to connect on internet without cable?
Connection. So the question is very relevant. You know, internet remains a challenge, very much. And if there is a technology out there that can be useful, of course, we'd like to know about it. And don't hesitate to bring it to our attention. We can see how, if it is something that has merit, why shouldn't we consider it? Because we are looking for a solution to our problems. And particularly when it is coming from, I don't know exactly about the technology he is referring to, but definitely would like to know more about it and see how, if it has advantage, yes, Africa will be ready to be using it.
Jean-Claude says, thanks, Mr. Ouedraogo, for this very positive and inspiring message. Africa is indeed the new El Dorado for space business. The question is it contemplated to develop new Pan-African, for example, African constellation, Earth observation satellites, and so on? As you said, African people should capture the benefits of space development. Grouping forces, land financial resources may help them achieve this.
Okay. Yes, we are discussing it. We are discussing that with partners. I wouldn't cite them nominally, but we are discussing with partners on the possibility, since satellites are becoming cheaper and cheaper. And also we are building capacity to build satellites made in Africa. I think it's something that we are considering. But also having said that, we have to consider, like what we already discussed, the issue of debris. We need to ensure that we don't really overburden the space because it's our common good and we should work as much as possible to protect it. If there is something already out there that can really meet our need as we are moving on, we will definitely put everything on the table and come up with the right decision.
The last question from Jake is, can an individual of one African country work in the space industry of another African country? Is there any policy regarding that at a continental level?
That's a very good question. In fact, owing to the fact that no one country really has all the requisite human capital to really undertake a meaningful space program, we felt as African space policy and strategy that Africans should work together. Within the department I am in charge of, we are also working on mobility, academic mobility, intra-African academic mobility to ensure that African with different skills and expertise can really move easily across the continent to support each other in different research and teaching programs. It is something that that require to really have some type of equivalence of the degrees, the skills, etc. So it's something that we are really working on. But of course, it has to be backed by the regulation to make it possible. So it's definitely coming. It's not a done deal yet, but definitely it's coming. Already, if you take, for example, in the area of academics, universities, within the CAMES system, there are equivalents and different teachers, professors are moving easily across countries. They are teaching. If you take the Pan-African University is constructed based on the fact that it will use expertise and teaching from across Africa. And we expect that when we launch the Pan-African University Space Science Institute, we'll use expertise and teaching professionals from across Africa to man that institute.
Thank you, Doctor. Sorry, I know that I said last question, but the president has a question, and I would like to take this opportunity, if you don't mind, to ask the final question.
Of course, I can't refuse the question of the president, can I?
That was my position also. Thank you for your kind consideration. So she says, how do we define the relationship between the African Space Agency and the national agencies that are currently in charge of space?
Well, that's a very good question. And I believe that once we have the space agency fully fledged and working, that relation has to be tested. For now, what we have decided is that the space agent, the National Space Agency, will be part of a special group of a committee that will be advising the Continental African Space Agency, so that first of all, it will allow the agency to know what is going on in Africa, what are the different initiatives, how do we build, how do we ensure that there is coherence in what the Continental Space Agency is doing and the national programs, and complementarity, and also subsidiary element of subsidiarity, all these things. So it's very important. They have to work hands on hand so that they make better use of the limited resources that are available.